Thank you very much for that question. First of all, we are in a hemisphere, belong countries in the Organization of American States. If you analyze the operations of the OAS, we have deliberately established that countries will not interfere in the domestic affairs of other countries. So when there is sibling rivalry, the rest of us, especially the CARICOM countries, believe that we should play a balancing role. We should not be in the alacrity, in the orbit of what is happening in Venezuela with the readiness to impose sanctions, visa facilities, etc. We need to take our time. Diplomacy is being dealt with an abundance of caution and with patience. We need to pursue the avenue of peace through peaceful endeavors, through patience. And no doubt, in the absence of the recommendations of the Immigration Department, I cannot give careful and sensible treatment to your question. We need to await that particular proposal so that we can dissect the anatomy of it and respond appropriately. But at this juncture in time, we must, as a country, encourage a diplomatic solution to the problem and pray for peace in Venezuela, because conflict never benefits a country. It undermines economic and social development, and obviously we want Venezuela to return to a state of stability. Venezuela has been our friend from even before independence, and we must not abandon Venezuela because of the turbulence that is really happening currently. We need to continue as a country, as a people, as a CARICOM region, to encourage dialogue, to encourage peace, and for us to resolve this particular problem in the diplomatic sphere.
I have a question, just pausing it. The United Nations Human Rights Council already put out a statement saying that 52,000 Venezuelans seeking asylum, fleeing the country. Are you suggesting then that St. Lucia should open its arms to Venezuelans because of the crisis we're in, coming to the country? Are you saying that we should just open up and allow them to come through?
I cannot casually make such a determination at a press conference. We need to analyze the situation very carefully. We have our own particular challenges, and at this particular point in time, we must pursue courses of actions that will balance our domestic obligations with our international obligations. So definitely we need to look at various proposals and deal with it. In opposition, we are in no position to decide for the government, but it is something that I believe that the government should take to the parliament, and let's have an honest debate about what should be done in this particular case. But it's not something you can casually say, yes, we should, or no, we should not.
Okay, but Mr. Baptiste, do you think that the Prime Minister's statements are justified, seeing as to how Venezuelans are somewhat involved in the crime happening in St. Lucia as of late?
If that is the posture that will be assumed, we know we have a lot of problems with other countries as well. We have heard even CARICOM countries, dealing in ways that contribute to violence. We hear about Martinique all the time. St. Lucians going to Martinique, Martinicans coming here. Do we just rush to impose visa facilities on people coming from Martinique? That's why, you see, the diplomatic world is not a place for simpletons. It is not a place for simpletons at all. We must conduct our affairs with great dexterity, and we need to take time to analyze things, to comprehend it in all of its ramifications. It's only then you can make a determination that will be appropriate.
I have a question for Mr. Pierre, actually. Mr. Pierre, in your statement, you made a reference to the administration's awarding direct awards, and also Minister Joseph, and both of them have defended the practice by saying, A, that the previous administration utilized direct awards to carry out their agenda, and B, the Prime Minister yesterday said that it allowed for efficiency in execution of projects. So I just wanted your response
Sure.
to those defenses of the practice, and I wanted to clarify whether you were stating that the recent contract for road construction is actually in contravention of the laws? Is that what you said?
Yes.
So could you just respond to the
direct awards?
The direct award
Sure.
justifications, and then I'm going to ask you about the legal stuff.
Sure. We never said that there's anything illegal in direct awards. We never said so. What we're speaking about is the process. A direct award gives the Minister of Finance authority to give a contract to anybody to do any work, right? That is within the law. He has the authority once he gets a request from the ministry in question. What we are questioning is the process of giving the direct award. If you may recall that any time our government gave a direct award, we ask for what we call selective bidding from 5 or 6 contractors, and we choose the one that was cheaper and more efficient, and then we made the award. We did not, in the case of the Mico roads, one request came to the Ministry of Finance. One request. The Ministry of Finance asked the Ministry of Infrastructure to look into the veracity of the amounts being claimed by that contractor. It is alleged that the Ministry of Infrastructure came back and said that the amount, that the cost of the road was less than the $15.9 million. That is the allegation. The Ministry of Finance then awarded the contract for $15.9 million. The Ministry of Finance never asked any other contractor to bid. So the idea of the direct award is okay. The question is the process of giving the direct award.
So are you claiming that all of the direct awards given under the previous administration used the selective bidding process?
Except one, which was when the Rodney Bay Bridge collapsed, you recall?
Yeah.
We did that by direct award, and we called 3 contractors on the phone. And and what's important, the minister, in fact, this minister never got involved. The chief engineer made the calls, and the chief engineer evaluated what was happening.
And this includes the St. Jude's project as well, the work that you did on the St.
The St. Jude's project was not handled by the Ministry of Infrastructure.
Okay. Understood. So now I just want to look at the statement that you made alleging that this recent contract was in contravention of the law. If you look at the Finance Act,
and then we have copies for you, which we will, for ease of reference, Section 39 and 41 of the Finance Administration Act, 15.01. It is said that any loan, and we have copies available for you, any loan that is given to the government must come to Parliament for approval, because the Parliament is being guaranteed by the people of St. Lucia, and must come to Parliament for approval. When we came into government, we found a number of these design finance bill contracts, a number of them given to a company called A&M, a number of them. Also, without any selective bidding, they were just awarded to A&M. And the Angers Road comes to mind. The Angers Road the Microsoft roads reminds me a lot of the Angers roads. It was the same process. One company gave an approval, but in the case of the Angers Road, the company had requested $11 million for the construction of the Angers Road. But when it came to the ministry objected, and the price went down to, I think, 7 or 8 million. Right? All these design finance bill awards were in the system. We took each one of them to Parliament, and we got parliamentary approval. That's what the law says, and you can check it for yourself. So the Mico South roads, it is a loan which Fresh Start is making to the government. It's a loan of $15.9 million, and according to the law, that these loans must come to Parliament like all other loans. And the Finance Administration Act speaks to it in sections 39 and 41.
Given that you have a parliamentary minority, what does the Labour Party plan to do in response? Well,
as we've brought it to the attention of the Prime Minister, we're going to write him, although it is not in his DNA to answer letters from the leader of the opposition.
But we're going to write him, and then we will take the next step. There's always another step, which is the process of going to the courts.
Mr. Pierre, just stay where you are regarding the price. Is the thing on gas?
Yes, sir.
Said the administration would keep on saying that you made a profit.
Yes.
Of $6 and something cents.
And they had a match for that also.
Yes, they have a match for that. Explain your administration part role in that. Did you all actually made a profit?
No, but
Was it less than six?
there was no
There
profit.
Was no profit
I'll tell you
whatsoever?
something.
Did you
The
subsidize
government doesn't
it at
import.
point?
The government doesn't import fuel, you know. And I know we have to make that clear. And you know, and this is why the Prime Minister has to continuously repeat. There is an old adage that says, if you repeat a lie long enough, people will believe it. There's an old adage that says that. That's the basis of propaganda. The calculations for gas is not done by the minister, you know. It's done by officials of the Ministry of Finance. Government ministers who calculate gas. When the order comes for the gas prices, it is signed by a technocrat in the Ministry of Finance. Then that order is sent to the Ministry of Commerce, because the Ministry of Commerce is the implementing ministry. But all calculations for gas are made by technocrats in the Prime Minister's ministry in itself. The Prime Minister, Minister of Finance. All the Prime Minister has to do is call his technocrats and say to them, show us where the 686 is. That's all he had to do. Because you know what the government does? They just accuse and accuse and accuse, and they have the files. They have all the information.
But it could be $3. It may not be $6.85.
Okay, here is the basis of the calculation. I want you to show me where in these two calculations can you see any profit. This is why I made it available to you. You understand? It's very clear that the Prime Minister is embarrassed. So that embarrassment is causing him to repeat something that he cannot verify. The Prime Minister is the Minister of Finance. He must go to the public and say, here is the evidence. But he speaks about transparency. Here are the calculations.
Question for Mr. Henry. What do you make about the government's call for...
1 second. April did not mention Mr. Pierre.
Any more questions?
Yeah, from Mr. Pierre.
Yeah, any more questions from Mr. Pierre, and then we can move on to the next question.
Thank you.
So what do you make of the government's call for your resignation? Seeing they cited your involvement in the whole minister's account, the whole minister's account thing that has been played off.
Yeah, can you answer to the specific allegations made against you?
Okay. Thank you very much for asking the question, and of course, I'm happy today that I could stand before you and give my response. My response is as such that. One, I'm assigned in the parliament by the leader of the opposition. I'm not in the Prime Minister's cabinet. I didn't win the election, and I'm not accountable to the Prime Minister for being in the parliament. The other part of the question I need to speak to is the fact that it's not unusual for architects, engineers, quantity surveyors, lawyers, planners, doctors, dentists, and some other professionals to be employed or practicing as a professional while they're in the public service. I was not in the public service. I was in the statutory organization, and I continue to work as a professional, and that I have no qualms about, and I'm open about it. Secondly, the government has won the election, they're in power, and they have all of the files. So they can choose to say whatever they want and put out the facts out. What is important is that I've asked certain questions through the Labour Party to the UWP government as it relates to some of the questions that have been asked again concerning Fresh Start, concerning the forestry housing project that has been implemented and it was not approved while the work was going on by the DCA. The DCA had not approved. Approval was given to facilitate the ceremony. The government is in a position to answer those questions. One very important question concerning the National Lottery Authority I would like to ask. Did the National Lottery Authority, under this new administration, award service to a quantity surveyor to value the National Stadium for approximately $200,000, which they could have done for approximately 20. Isn't the government in a better position to account to the people for their own actions while in government than to ask Joachim Henry questions about my participation as a quantity surveyor, practicing quantity surveyor for 25 years in this country? Of course, they have the files and they can choose to put out whatever they want. But they're the ones in power. They need to answer the questions, the pertinent questions relating to their accountability to the people, their responsibility in providing information and answering questions. As a senator, on behalf of the St. Lucia Labour Party, I will join the Labour Party in asking those questions in Parliament, at the press conference, and asking them to provide an account for their action while in government. And there's a lot that will be asked as we go through the years. And you are aware of the overwhelming, the amount of information that you've been part of, the number of questions we have asked, the number of questions that we continue to ask, and there have been no answers from the government. So that's my response. When they answer the questions, they're in a position to provide answers to the question that they're asking me. Let them answer it. What I can do is to continue to ask them questions based on their stewardship as they're in government.
What do you make of Nancy Jones's appointment as project manager for the government?
Certainly, this is this one is certainly one that it begs for the government to give a thorough explanation on. Did somebody pursue on it 2 weeks, 3 weeks? What do you call that? Conference or seminar, and then can be promoted to a grade 19 position? Can that be done? Shouldn't the government provide explanation to the people of St. Lucia as to how that can happen within its ranks? And there are persons within the public service qualified enough to assume that responsibility? Can these questions, these are pertinent questions that the people of St. Lucia would prefer to get an answer for than to ask Joachim Henry about my practice as a quantity surveyor. As a matter of fact, I'm available, and that's why they called me. They continue to dialogue with the National Lottery. I do not have a problem with them, so I do not know which part of the UWP administration that continues to probe those questions. But I think it is what I call méchanceté. They're trying to be troublesome.
So let me just correct you. And you did answer one of the questions that the UWP asked, and that was, did you receive contracts from the NLA while you were at the SSTM? But there was some serious allegations, Mr. Henry.
Can you? Which one specifically?
Senator, using your position as the director of SSDF to get inside information on the program.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
That's using drawings of projects belonging to the SSDF as part of
absolutely not. No. That is
receiving over $200,000 in payments in advance from the minister's account to oversee.
Absolutely not. The government, they do have the information, let them put it out. As a quantity surveyor, as a professional, I was employed as the St. Lucia Social Development as the executive director. I was not employed as a quantity surveyor. I provided my services consistent with my technical expertise, and everything I did was my work, and I deserve, I deserve to be paid for my work. I have no problem, and I'm open about it. There's nothing hanky-panky about working as a St. Lucian, and I continue to apply my trade, my expertise. But this is mischief. You understand? I am not guilty of anything that is being suggested. But they have the files. You understand? What is important is that the same National Lottery Authority that is speaking to, upon assuming, ask them, ask the question, have they not awarded a service contract to somebody to value the Darren Sammy Stadium for approximately $200,000 for insurance purposes? And could they have not... Did they contact somebody else that could have done it for 20? And have they ever awarded and paid? Is it for money laundering? I ask the question. So, and this question is more pertinent. And this question is more important to the people of St. Lucia when people are unemployed, when people are dismissed on the job. I have nothing, absolutely nothing to hide. I got into politics because I want to serve the people of St. Lucia. I do not plan to get rich. As a quantity surveyor, I have worked. I've gotten an opportunity to work. I've worked in the past. I'm not doing much now, but I'll continue to do so. Any information they have about me, let them put it out to the public. But what is important that the UWP must consider, highlight errors made. But please do not go about repeating and making worse. What they have done thus far epitomizes skullduggery that you would never imagine in this part of this island. And this is what we have to deal with as a people.
Do you find suspicious that both the current and the past NLA board have been silent about this whole minister's account thing? I think they will be in the best position to shed light on this whole debacle.
Well, I think as an opposition, I really do not want to speak about who is quiet, who is not quiet. Clearly, the media is in a position to ask questions to everybody. Go to the members of the NLA board, ask them whether persons within the NLA board, upon the signing the NLA board, they have fired persons from the board. Ask those questions and ask them why. You understand? But clearly, this government and the people doing this thing is one of mischief, nation state. That's what it's about. It's not about trying to resolve, because if something is done wrongly, if I'm called, in fact, at one board meeting, I was called by the National Lottery Authority to resolve a matter outstanding, and they said to me everything was okay. And I did say to the National Lottery Authority, any problems associated with my work, I am able to call me up. I will respond. I said, write me in person. I could also write formally. I have nothing to hide as a quantity surveyor who have worked all over through the length and breadth of St. Lucia. There's nothing to hide about my practice. It was not a sort of corrupt practice. No, this is genuine work for genuine money. And this is just about $200,000 worth of work. This is not the $1 million awarded to somebody to do an audit of St. Jude. Up to now, the media cannot get an explanation as to why a $1 million service contract was awarded to an individual to do an audit of St. Jude Hospital. Have you seen the audit? It's a compilation of existing documents that was there. You understand? So this whole idea of political mischief, I got into politics and I am not expecting it to be easy. But I will not remain quiet. I will not remain silent in asking those questions. And a lot they need to ask. And if they're going to put out information, get the documents and the files from the National Lottery, they should take all of the files, including what they have just done as soon as they have entered this office, and explain to the people. The hospital, I understood, I know government have a policy towards insuring, and most of our government buildings are not insured. The hospital is not insured. Government waterfront buildings are not insured. Why would you want to insure the Darren Sammy Stadium, upon taking office, and spend approximately $200,000 immediately upon taking office? Was it because that building critically need insurance? When the hospital is not insured, waterfront buildings are not insured? Why? Isn't that a more probing question for them to answer? And I'm not speaking out of my head, because I was called and I was asked how much it would cost for me to offer the service. So, you understand? And of course, there's so much the $200,000 could have done. I mean, you discussed the issue of Harry first-time persons going to represent St. Lucia. Couldn't the $38,000 be multiplied by a little more? Couldn't that be done? It is the National Lottery Authority for Youth Development and Sports. So these questions are important questions. You understand? And I mean, they have the files. They called me and they spoke to me about it. They wanted to rectify some information. They said they had no problems. But all of a sudden, after speaking and asking the questions about the question concerning the housing project in Forestier, I saw this as a response. Instead of answering the question, then they said about Joachim Henry. And I worked as a quantity surveyor. So I'm not afraid of the questions they would ask. I am open. I think in St. Lucia, I am not afraid to say what I've done that's wrong. Because if you're in politics, you must be open to the people. I'm not afraid. And anytime I would make a mistake that's wrong, I would say I'm wrong. But I am comfortable that I stand not guilty as far as the remarks they're making. But more importantly, they should answer the questions as it relates to their own practice upon taking office. and the important questions in terms of their procurement approach, the business to procurement, how they have gone awarding contracts, the approach to finance and build. This is reckless, you understand? And use the opportunity to investigate and ask other questions. You know, is Total Development, the company with the chairman, the company's chairman of the HUDC, supplying materials to Fresh Start? These questions are important. There you could find major issues of conflict of interest and ethical behaviors that would scare us as a country. So these are the areas I think that government need to make clear and come straight with the people of St. Lucia. You know, and I would wait as we continue to answer your questions, but more importantly, as you yourself cause the government in power to provide answers to the very important questions that we are asking. Thank you.
I have a question for Dr. Hilaire, please.
Just on the matter of just the service contract, we want to make it clear that the Senator Henry is not in any way condemning the provider of the service. What he is condemning is the need for the service at this time, but in no way is he calling in the professional integrity of the service provider into question. This is not the case. He is not taking the professional integrity of the provider. We have no issues with the professional integrity of the provider or what he charged. These are professional fees that professionals charge. What we call into question is whether the process was correct or whether that issue, it was the right time, the timing of that situation, not the provider. I just want to make it clear.
Very, very briefly, Dr. Hilaire, I wanted an update.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ivan. Well, you would recall at the sitting of Parliament where the motion had to be debated, the Speaker informed that the Prime Minister and member for Miko South had written to her and asked for an adjournment because he felt he had not had sufficient time to prepare for the debate on the changes to the regulations. You'd also recall that just after the sitting of Parliament, the member for Miko South and Prime Minister indicated to the press that his reason was not what he had said in his letter. His reason was that the wording of the resolution, he was not comfortable with it. The Speaker indicated then that it was going to be heard at another sitting. I had stood up then to inquire of the Speaker, how was that possible, knowing that this was the last sitting, and according to the procedures, motions die with the sessions of Parliament. So the motion died at that sitting of Parliament. Since then, we've spoken to the Speaker. I've actually written to the Speaker, reminding her of her letter, which indicated that it would be placed on the next sitting of the House. And the next sitting of the House had taken place, and it was not placed on the motion. She informed me that we are supposed to resubmit it. It was not going to automatically be carried on to the next session, which she had not indicated in her letter. But of course, I guess having done the research and found out the correct procedure, she indicated to me that we had to resubmit to Parliament the motion. I have since resubmitted the motion to Parliament, and we are expecting that at the next sitting of Parliament, it would be placed on the order paper, and we will have a substantive debate on the changes to the CIP regulations. So we're looking forward to the next sitting of Parliament, which is long overdue. It's long overdue.
Given your familiarity with, the CIP Act and the regulations, in the interim between when your negative resolution was supposed to have been filed and debated and now, I'm assuming that there may have been CIP activity in terms of applications processed or whatever. Do you think that, by delaying the debate, do you believe that was maybe cover for getting applications processed? I mean, what's your feeling on that?
Well, I mean, the regulation, the procedure says that from the time the regulations are passed, anything that's done in relation to the changes will hold So, I mean, put it that way, until we have a debate in Parliament, it is treated as if it has been changed. So there is no issue per se with that. But there's a deeper issue with the CIP, and it is one which we will address over the next few days. And we will be sharing information with you which will really shock you as to what's happening in the CIP. Because the Prime Minister, as Minister of the CIP, made changes to the CIP regulations. We question some of those changes. And now information is coming to us which really reveals the true reason why certain things were done. And of course, we heard that the CEO had been sent on administrative leave. And I think some of you in a press conference in response to our last press conference asked and was told that there is a new CEO. I'm sure if any of you can point out to me where the job was advertised. Again, I have nothing against the new CEO, but surely we did not even know, the public had not been told that the last CEO had in fact been terminated. You heard that the person was on administrative leave, which means that the person had engaged in gross misconduct and was being investigated. And when you made the inquiry, you were told that there is a new CEO coming on board, a job that was never advertised. Nobody was told that the CEO had been terminated. And, you know, a lot is happening now. We have projects being announced that are CIP projects. And we will be having very shortly an exchange with you as to some of what is going on in the CIP now. And I think you will put a lot of things in context and you'll understand why certain things have been done. But over the next few days, I'm sure we'll have some more to say on that.
That's it.
Finally, from me, given the Labour Party's dissatisfaction with the current state of the administration of CIP, do you regret the implementation of the program?
We don't regret the implementation of the program from the simple point of view that when the program was implemented, there were very robust and rigid measures put into place to ensure its integrity. The government has changed that and shaped it in its own likeness. And we cannot say that we would in any way conceive that a government could have been so inconsiderate and would have bastardized what was a well-respected program in a manner in which they've done. If we had not done it that way, I'm sure they would have implemented it in their own likeness like they've done. At least we had a chance to say that St. Lucia was entering the market with a very well-respected, well-structured program like we did. And like I said, some people tell me I'm kind of naive when I say it. I never thought for one moment that a government could have vulgarized and bastardized a program as quickly as they did.
Just before we end, I need to. My question is to.
Yes.
We went in to the leader of the opposition.
Yes,
Take
ask.
the page.
Oh, you coming on?
Sorry, Dr.
Okay.
And I guess I'll say something. And,
Yes,
and I said,
I mean, he spoke of Tennyson Joseph as though he speaks of racism or racial tones in what Tennyson Joseph said. The Prime Minister tried to link that with some sort of racial or racism into it. So what's your views on that?
first of all, I'm sure both Dr. Hill and myself will defend robustly the University of the West Indies, since both of us are graduates of the University of the West Indies. That's the first point. The second point is the Prime Minister must stop using the Prime Minister's office as a bullying pulpit, where he just goes in there and accuses everybody and says whatever he wants and saying things, not understanding that he's the Prime Minister and his words sometimes can create great hardship to people. The Prime Minister must understand that universities are not there to be PR for the government or to say what the government wants or to say what the government thinks is right. Universities are there to cause people to think outside the box. They are created so people can think. Lecturers cannot be people saying the same things as Guy Joseph. Lecturers have to be people who think outside the box and who bring a new version, new ideas to people. What the Prime Minister had to do is to disagree with what Dr. Tennyson Joseph said, if he had to, but don't go into the fact to attack him personally. And I'm very, very annoyed at that. It has happened before. There are people in St. Lucia who have been offered regional jobs. And ministers in this government have called the regional institutions and said to the people, do not employ these people because they are so-called supporters of the Labour Party. And the Prime Minister says, now, I don't have to defend what Dr. Joseph said intellectually. Dr. Joseph is in a position to do this, to do it for himself. What I object to is using the Prime Minister's pulpit to do what the Prime Minister is doing with it. You must understand, Dr. Joseph has a right to his opinion and not to effectively say that Dr. Joseph ought to be fired. Because that's what he said. He's calling, I must understand the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister. And to say publicly that because a gentleman expressed his opinion that he should be indirectly say he should be fired is wrong. And the Labour Party will defend Dr. Joseph not for what he said, but defend him for his right to say it. And I'm sure Dr. Hilaire, who is like Dr. Joseph, also a lecturer, can explain it also. And all of us can do the same.
Might I one of the countries impose urea chocolate of money?
Exactly, come to consider where the Prime Minister directly has and can have an effect on the University of West Indies. This is dangerous.
But why you may not defend?
Well, first of all, let me say that Dr. Joseph is a brilliant academic, and he's a rising intellectual in the regional landscape when it comes to scholarship and critical thinking. So you're not speaking of somebody who's a fly-by-night commentator or somebody who's just written a piece according to his whims and fancy. You're talking about an academic with a very reputable status in scholarship. The Prime Minister obviously does not understand what universities are about and how one is educated at a university. A university teaches you to critically analyze the societies about you and to find solutions to problems of society, whatnot. And what Dr. Joseph did, and I don't have to defend it, nor the Labour Party defend it per se, he did what lecturers and professors do. You subject the society to analysis. And he was making a point about the phenomenon of businessmen becoming political leaders and the belief that business capabilities equates to excellence in leadership and into political leadership in particular. Now, you may not agree with him, but that's fine, because those of us who have taught at the university, or even those of us who have been to university, or even higher education, will tell you the different theories, the different perspectives, because that's what happens in institutions of higher learning. I don't agree with everything Dr. Joseph said. We went to school together, and we taught together. I don't agree with everything he says, but his quality of analysis and critical thinking is excellent, and he must be recognized for that. Now, for the Prime Minister to say two things, that some of the articles that Dr. Tennyson Joseph has written are racist. Now, if you're saying some of the things I've written racist, you're saying I'm a racist, huh? And for you to call him a racist because he said certain things you don't agree with is grossly disrespectful. Because if the Prime Minister does not agree that slavery was bad, if he does not agree that white people who were the planter class did in fact abuse, murdered, tortured slaves, if he doesn't agree that black people have suffered for generations as a result of slavery, and somebody says that, and says that it was the white planter class who did that, does that make that person a racist? Just because you may not agree with certain points of view? And then secondly, the Prime Minister says he's surprised the university has not called on him for writing those articles and he is still there teaching. It's to say as a Prime Minister that because somebody has written an article or articles that you disagree with, they should be fired from the university, which means that the university must only teach the things that I believe are acceptable and in in accordance with my own interpretation of history and how society should be organized. Now, that kind of bigotry and that kind of thinking has no place in our society, especially when you're encouraging people to be more critical thinkers, to open our minds, to have different ways of analyzing society. You analyze society according to race. You analyze society according to class. You analyze society according to a professional status of people. I mean, whether you talk about Durkheim and Marx and, Brathwaite and all those writers that have sought to analyze Caribbean societies from different perspectives. Not because you agree for perspective, the person should be fired from the university. I mean, I've never heard anything as bizarre as that. And, when I heard the Prime Minister say that, and I was thinking, what would be the reaction of educators around the region and other leaders who hear Prime Minister say that? And then I recall the expression on the face of the Prime Minister of Grenada when he said about the patrimony. And I recall what Gaston Brown said about a not too smart Prime Minister. And again, he's just consistent with this Prime Minister, his views. Every time he says something at the regional level, it embarrasses us.
Finally, on that topic, well, I was actually going to segue into another leader who was spoken about by Dr. Joseph, who should be Donald Trump. And on the international scale, are you guys, from an international relations perspective, concerned about what's going on now between North Korea and the U.S. and any ramifications generally on our region?
Well, I think Honorable Alva Baptist responded to it perfectly, that diplomacy is not a quick meal. You cook a rice on tuna and you finish with it. It's not that. It's a painstaking process of understanding and avoiding miscommunication and making sure you engage people and you speak with them. And he spoke about it quite well, where he explained to you what's the nature of diplomacy. And I think for not just as a party, but as individuals looking at global politics, you want to wish that the rhetoric is toned down before somebody just takes a step they're not supposed to take because they're kind of scared by what they hear from the other side. And that's how you conduct it. You ask everybody to just tone down, and to lessen the rhetoric. So yes. But the Prime Minister says the similarity with Trump ends with the fact that they are successful businessmen. Well, I don't know that anybody wants to say they have any similarity with Trump. But he saw that he had a similarity with Trump. So that's his business. But there's something else in the interview which exposed another similarity. You recall Trump was boasting of all the successes he's had in his first year. And everybody in the media was asking, well, where are those successes that he was talking about? So the Prime Minister said Tennyson Joseph would have seen all the successes of his government for the first year. But I think the Prime Minister seemed to have forgotten that within that first year we had the biggest demonstration in the history of St. Lucia, which probably tells you something about just how successful his government has been. So he probably have more similarities with Trump than he cared to admit, but that's for him to reflect on.
Okay.